ever heard somebody say, I got Indian in my family? As a person of African descent, give me a 1 in the, okay, 76 Grimke gave me a 1. Thank you. Thank you, Conjure. Okay. Now, so this segment, we're going to talk about the Dawes Commission. This was a system that essentially, what are people doing? They know I have my show. They know I have a show on Tuesday, and they want to call me during the show. So, the Dawes Commission was essentially something that it was a legal group that used the law to disenfranchise a great number of Native American tribes in the United States. Okay, mainly. Hold on. Yes. Mainly, and it was a system that essentially destroyed the communal land system of the Native Americans and placed it with the European style of individual land ownership. Okay, so I'm sure in school we learned about how the Europeans came and took the Native Americans' land, and it wasn't always through violence. Sometimes they did it using quote unquote the law. Okay. Now the Dawes Commission, it specifically negotiated a peace between what they called the 5 civilized tribes: the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek, and the Seminole. Okay. And what the Dawes Commission did was, instead of, the Native Americans did not have a concept of people owning individual plots of land, right? They were like, okay, it's the earth. It's we don't have any claim to it. Native Americans are nomadic, so they didn't have this idea of owning individual plots of land. But because they're having such an issue with the Europeans, they're like, look, we gotta figure something out. And the Europeans are like, well, let's try and do this individual allotment. I don't think the Native Americans necessarily understood what that meant, because they did not understand the idea of individual ownership of land. The Dawes Commission said, you no longer own this space as a community. We're going to give you little pieces of land based on whether you are actually Native American or not. And you're going to have to prove whether you're Native American. So then each person within the tribe would get, a little piece of land, as opposed to the whole tribe owning, the whole thing together. So now let's think of this. Let's think of this, right? We are a community. We're used to doing everything communal. The land, we all use the land. We all grow on the land, right? Then we have to go through this thing where we have these individual plots of land. How does that how does that change our society? Because we're used to sharing everything, and now everything is individual, right? The Native Americans, because they didn't have the concept of individual land ownership, essentially this was a contract that they agreed to that they didn't understand. This is why it's important for you to understand all of the contracts you sign, because you don't want to get disenfranchised, right? There was a movie that I watched, or no, not a movie. There's a series called Startup, and there is a scene where this young woman, she is so blinded by this amount of money that a company is offering to buy her tech startup, that she signs the contract and she doesn't read it. And she doesn't realize that she signed over ownership of her entire company, and they pushed her out, right? And much like the Native Americans, they didn't understand this idea of individual land ownership. They just signed it because they're like, I mean, I guess whatever, let's just stop fighting and figure this out. And now they've lost their land. And this Dawes Commission, it is, you got land based on your Native American ancestry, and then any land that was left over was sold off, to the European settlers. Okay, so that is the broad strokes of the Dawes Commission that I want to talk about today. What we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks is how the Dawes Commission and this classification as Native American was used to disenfranchise African American people who had Native American ancestry because of how they were categorized. And we're going to tie that into intellectual property. I'm not going to do it all tonight because it's a lot of information. But for tonight, what I want you to recognize is that not understanding a contract can cost you a lot. The Native Americans had no concept of individual land ownership. So when they agreed to the Dawes Commission, they did not understand that they were giving up access to the entire to the land that they had, grown up on. So understand what you're signing, and if you don't, find someone who can explain it to you. Okay. So that was the beginning of my I got Indian in my family segment. Next week we are going to go into how freed slaves came into these tribes, and how their classification, depending on where they were, was used to either get them land or disenfranchise them. And then after that, we're going to talk about how some people of African and Native descent, now they are currently suing the federal government and some tribal governments for their place in the tribe so that they can get their allotments. All right. So if any of that interests you, please stay tuned for that. And again, you need to understand your contracts when you're signing them, because if you sign something you don't understand, you never know what you're giving up. Okay. All right.